Well, the big story that we are tracking this evening, after cracking down on Chinese mobile companies over alleged tax evasion, Bloomberg reports that the government is considering a ban on Chinese firms from selling their smartphones for below 12,000 rupees in the Indian market. The move is believed to be intended at promoting local smartphone brands. Now, CNBC TV 18 has reached out to the government for a clarification, and sources say there is currently no such proposal under consideration. As on date, Chinese companies hold nearly 66% of market share in India's smartphone market. According to a report by Counterpoint Research, Chinese smartphones from 80% of the sub 12,000 rupee smartphone segment, while Indian companies hold just about 3 to 4%. Are Indian smartphone makers ready to grab the huge market share held by Chinese companies if such a ban goes through? And will a ban hurt more than it can help? To answer that and more, we're joined by Pankaj, Chairman of the India Cellular and Electronics Association, Madhav Sheth, Vice President and India CEO of Realme, and Hari Om Rai, Chairman and MD of Lava. Gentlemen, thanks very much for joining me on the program. Also with us, my colleague Ashmit Kumar, who's been tracking this story closely. Mr. Mohindroo, let me start by coming to you first. What we have seen is a report that's been put out by Bloomberg saying that the government is considering banning Chinese mobile phones under the sub 12,000 rupee category, which is, of course, the lion's share of the market. We have tried to independently verify that report, and what we are being told at this point in time is that there is no such proposal under consideration. Now, I don't know how this is going to play itself out, but let me start by asking you, is a ban warranted, and is that the preferred way forward?
Shirin, thank you for having me. You see, we are in a very different world now, so I will not avoid your question or evade it. But the world is very different. You just reported that US is putting in $52 billion to rebuild to activate their semiconductor industry. So the world is thinking in a certain direction, and India wants to be a big tiger economy, which is firing on all cylinders, right? You've seen that we have had great success in mobile phone manufacturing. We've grown 1,500%. From under 19,000 crores to almost 3 lakh crores of manufacturing. And the Chinese companies have also participated vigorously in that. What we are seeing is a very relentless thought process in the government that, in each sector there should be a presence of Indian companies, right? And we have to nurture them and develop them. And nobody is saying no to that. If you ask Madhav and any of the Chinese companies, we are all great friends, and the industry is not divided between Indians, Americans, Chinese. There's no division like that. It's a division in the mind of the media, perhaps, and that's how it is reported. All the companies from China are producing in India, and what has unfortunately happened is that the Indian companies have not performed up to expectation, and there was a major shrinkage in their market share, and that is a matter of great concern. So there can be no smoke without fire. So many things, many formulations, permutation combinations have been discussed informally. That how can we help them, and if you remember in the PLI, a historic step was taken that under $200 will be reserved for Indian companies.
Well, just a second. So just a second, you're saying that there is no smoke without fire, and informally many options have been considered. So is this specifically an option that has been considered, that the government should consider banning Chinese smartphones under 12,000 rupees so that it gives a leg up to the domestic industry and domestic manufacturers? Is this specific proposal something that has informally been considered or discussed with industry?
Shirin, I am unable to answer that question. This is the first time in our interaction that I am unable to answer that question, because you see there are many proposals on the table, and there have been many discussions. I was just telling you that the $200 reservation for Indian owned companies is actually a part of the PLI, and I think the media is taking a cue from that, and numbers are being thrown around based on that. what has been asked from us is how much market share is held in various segments, under 300, under 200, under 100, and many such permutations and combinations have been asked from us. Now, what is very consistent is the deep determination of the government to build Indian companies in this sector, both in the brands and in the supply chain. And we support that, and at the same time we want to also stress that Chinese supply chain is a critical part of the global smartphone ecosystem and the global electronic ecosystem. And we have highlighted that.
Right. So if I can pick up on what you're saying. Yeah. So if I can pick up on what you're saying.
One last point. China has built its industry, electronic industry, on two virtual enemy countries, which is Taiwan and Japan. They got technology, they got investment, they got people from there, and they built this industry. So India has to take a leaf out of that, and it's a very, very gradual process to build strength, and that is what we have advocated.
So two things that I'm picking up from you, Mr. Mohindroo. There is no smoke without fire. So several options under consideration. Whether an outright ban is being considered, you will not confirm that, but several options are being considered at this point in time. And second, I think you alluded to that I guess the government will need to be mindful of the actions it takes, because the supply chain is heavily dependent on China, and whether that will lead to retaliatory measures by China and the implications for the Indian manufacturing industry, for the telecom industry, could perhaps be significant. So those are the two significant points that I pick up from what you're saying. Madhav Sheth, let me come to you now. This is the latest in the long list of woes that Chinese mobile phone manufacturers are dealing with. There are all kinds of investigations currently underway, and now, if reports are to be believed, there could be the possibility of an outright ban on the segment that commands the lion's share of the market. Madhav, how worried are you?
To be honest, I'm not at all worried at this point of time. The reason is because these are just, I believe, some sources which has not been confirmed yet. And we've been talking to the authorities very closely, and we know the intentions very clearly. First of all, I would like to say, on behalf of the entire industry, we are more Indian than any Indian companies what it's been called upon. We started in India, specifically Realme. We have, I think, not only about Realme, but I think our entire ecosystem right now have 100% manufacturing in India. I think we have helped to bring about 60 to 70% of the component ecosystem manufacturers to India. I'm talking about the entire industry, maybe it may be Oppo, Vivo, Xiaomi, or anyone, or including Realme. So these are the brands who have brought all the entire ecosystem back to India. So at this point of time, I think we have contributed a lot. We have created a lot of jobs at the same point of time. I think we've been misinterpreting the government intentions at this point of time, where we are focusing, as we have spoken to the authorities, we are mainly focusing, or their focus is mainly on the exports, building the local supply chain ecosystem, which is the most important thing, and the exports. I think that's what we've been focusing on, and we've been closely monitoring. I think, so to answer your question, yes, we are not worried on it, but we are closely monitoring the situation. At the same point of time, we are focusing on the things which we've been told to be focused upon by the authorities.
So what are the things that you've been asked to focus on? You said that there is a misinterpretation of the government's intention. So let me put that right back to you. What is it that you've been asked to focus on? You said that you're not worried because the government has explained its intent to you. So can you explain to us what has been told to you?
Misinterpretation is in the terms of media, but what government has clearly told us to focus is mainly on exports. That's point number one. Because I think India being a biggest consumption market, I think what we have to also focus is also on exports and getting manufacturing into India and exports from India. Point number two is also about building up the local supply chain system, because I think the entire components are currently being imported. How can we build the local supply chain system for the components for manufacturing? There are more than 300 components required for assembling a mobile phone. Currently 60 to 70% are being done in India. How can we bring other ecosystems also to India? I think that is where the main focus is all at this point of time.
Okay, exports is the focus as well as further localization. What is the current localization for a brand like yours, for Realme, for instance?
We are currently 100% manufacturing or assembling in India, with our 60 to 70% of the components being also manufactured in India. We are not only about the smartphones, but we are also on the AIoT ecosystems. Our smart TVs are 100% manufactured in India with the local ecosystem players. Our AIoT is like audios, wearables, I think TVs, everything's been manufactured in India. Now we have plans to manufacture laptops and tablets also very soon in India as well.
Okay, let me get Mr. Hariom Rai into the conversation. He's of course part of Lava, which is looking at building out the domestic opportunity in this space. Mr. Rai, many thanks for joining us. You know, to pick up on what we've heard there from Pankaj as well as Madhav, I want to understand from you, is this something that the domestic industry has put on the table for the government to consider, that the government should consider the possibility of restricting or banning the play of Chinese and the participation of Chinese mobile companies in this segment of the market? Is this has any such demand been raised by domestic manufacturers with the government?
I think, as Mr. Mohindroo has put it very clearly, no country is built without building its own companies. Why countries are rich? Because their companies are rich. That's the only process. And, the country is looking at building large companies, and our companies got destroyed, because of certain I would say not so fair play which happened because of the capital burn also happened in the last 3-4 years. So therefore I think there is a lot of government is considering a lot of things, that how can we be rebuilt, and it's a process of building the companies. Even for example, the 3 companies with Huawei, now Xiaomi and, BBK Group. These 3 companies were only 3% of China in 2007. They were about 12% of China, 10% of China market in 2012. And they were 90% of Chinese market in 2019 and 60% of the global market. So it's a process. Once the ecosystem shifts, the companies are working at a lower per capita than the other country, and then their output becomes very competitive. So we are also looking at this process to come into India, and we know that there's a very large opportunity. We are not just looking at a local market of India. It is just a small means, probably the enabler, but the government is looking at the global market, and they want to build the global champions. So I think that's a very big vision we have from the country, to build global champions from India. In that aspect, a lot of actions and a lot of support is being offered by the government, and we have to build the technology and skills in the most important segment of the world, and it is required for our security and defense purposes also. So put together, it is a very critical and strategic industry required for security, and we have to build our companies to acquire the skills for our technological and financial independence in the long term.
Okay. So, again, Mr. Rai, several issues that you have raised there, and of course the last one was the issue of security. But let me ask you very specifically, you said that the government is doing whatever is necessary to try and rebuild this sector from a domestic manufacturing standpoint, and that there was a degree of unfair play. So if now the domestic industry is seeking a level playing field, in your words, what is it that you have put on the table in terms of specific asks? Because going back to what Mr. Mohindroo said, the PLI scheme envisages both domestic companies as well as global companies as far as manufacturing champions are concerned. So what do you want the government to do to level the playing field, so to speak?
No, so let me just tell you about a little bit of background. For example, China has stopped all the American companies, the software companies, to be in China. And in the bargain, China could build very large software prowess in China. And despite that, entire America and Europe is buying, $500 billion of electronics from China. It's a process. Every country has the right to build its own companies. China had only one company in Fortune 500 list in 1996. Today they have 135. They have surpassed the US 120, US Fortune 500 company list. So I think it's a process. The government is looking at.
I get that, Mr. Rai. I get that. I get that. Yes, China has kept American companies, and their own homegrown tech companies are the ones that continue to control the market. What I'm asking is, given what you are saying and the analogies that you're using, have companies like yours, have the domestic manufacturers asked for a ban to be imposed?
Well, I think we cannot ask any ban to be imposed. We are asking for the right level playing field because, our per capita is 17% of China. The moment we create scale and skills, we'll be the most competitive in the world. That's the process every country has gone through. And I think we are asking for us to be developed and grown and not, anyone else to be, sidelined or whatever. So that's not our ask. Very clearly, every country has, we have been the thought, we have brought the thought of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. And from this thought, we are not against anyone. We are just favoring ourselves. We were foolish. Probably we are getting a little bit of wisdom and we are getting a little bit wiser that we have to grow ourselves. That's all.
Sure. Mr. Mohindroo, if I may come in on this conversation, we're talking of the ban, of course, that's in the domain of speculation right now. But in the recent past, we've also seen other measures which, in fact, have bordered what critics called moves that make the Chinese companies are trying to muscle these Chinese companies. That's the thrust of the criticism that has come. The question I want to ask you is, can India afford to disrupt that supply chain that you had referred to initially? We're looking at value addition of somewhere in the range of about 30 to 40 odd % here in the country. A large part of components we rely heavily on China. Any reciprocal measures there could disrupt the local manufacturing here. Your quick thoughts on that?
No, we have excellent relationships in the industry, and the so-called Chinese companies lean on leaders like Hariomji to set up issues and sort out issues, etc. The industry is not divided between Indian companies and Chinese companies. Chinese companies are always willing to nurture and develop Indian companies, and that is a promise. And I echo what Madhav was saying, that the two requests which the government of India has made is to develop the supply chain and to do significant exports from here. In my opening remarks, I said that we should take a leaf out of what China did to build a great supply chain and build this great industry which they have, which with exports of over $900 billion. That is when they depended, and they kept the supply chain open for all nations, especially from Taiwan and Japan. Their highest focus was that. So nobody can even in the right mind can think of disrupting anything like that. So it's not in the scheme of things, and the industry runs very harmoniously, and I think this has just been picked up as one sensational point. We had this $200 reservation for Indian companies in the PLI, and there was great cooperation from everybody. Did you hear a single protest from anybody?
Yeah.
From any Korean company, any Chinese company? Nobody had protested, because everybody understands that a certain segment, we need to encourage Indian companies and develop them. And we are all together in that.
Right. Okay, so you're essentially saying that you believe a ban is not going to be the way forward, or you hope that a ban is not going to be the way forward. Madhav, let me come back to you now. What policy decisions are taken, we don't know, and we cannot preempt them. What I want to understand from you, what has been the impact of the recent developments, the ED investigating Oppo, Xiaomi, Vivo, bank accounts being frozen? You're part of the BBK group as well. I want to understand from you, Madhav, what is the impact on business at this point in time on account of all of these developments?
I may not be able to comment on the ED investigation on the other brands because there's nothing with Realme as of now which has happened at this point of time. But I would just say one thing, probably that basically at Realme we always follow that basically we have to follow all the compliances and the local laws of the land. And we are continuing to do so. So I think the compliances would be extremely important for any of the companies. It may be an Indian or it may be a foreign company which has to be followed. And should be, I think, followed by any of the companies forming in the land of the laws.
Right. So, has there been any impact on sales for Realme so far?
Realme has grown to be number 2 brand right now at this point of time. We've been growing and we are the only brand who has been growing at this year. Even in Q1 we grew by around 20% and even in Q2 I think we were the fastest growing brand by around 24%. So I think we are the only brand who has grown by about 20% in this industry where other brands have degrown. So I think probably this speaks about that what is extremely important for the consumers in the Indian industry is also about the quality. Our return rates have been 0.6%. So hence what I echo the thoughts which Mr. Pankaj said, there's a supply chain which is extremely important for the quality purpose which has to be brought to be in India right now, which is in China. So I think that what we are trying to bring in India right now, which is around 50 to 60%. So I think it's extremely important for all these brands to make sure that basically the quality, which is the core importance or core relevance for any of the Indian consumers to be honored. And I think with Realme or with any of the other brands, with Realme we are at 0.6% lowest in the industry at this point of time, which gives a complete anxiety free for the consumers.
Sure.
And that's the reason I think Realme has been currently number 2 in the market.
Mr. Rai, again, just coming to you now for a quick final thought here. You spoke of ensuring a non-discriminatory fair playing field. I'm just building on the point that Shireen had made. We've seen recently ED raids. On telecom equipment, we've seen a list of trusted sources coming out which has excluded Chinese players. We've seen a central government policy that FDI coming in from China will have to be vetted for security concerns. Now, we've also seen the app ban. Are these measures, which of course are beyond the domain of simple policy making, also perhaps a step in that direction of ensuring that there is that level playing field that you were referring to?
I cannot comment on what government has, in terms of tax angles or the security angles. That's a very different aspect altogether. It's a completely government's prerogative. But I think we are, 18% of the global population surviving on a mere 3.1% of the global GDP. And we have our rights to build our companies to make sure that we are able to feed the people and, progress from poverty to wealth. I think in this process, when we are doing something, that should not be seen from this lens. That's a separate thing, and this is a separate thing altogether.
All right, well, we will have to wait to see whether there is any decision taken by the government to, in fact, impose a ban. What we are hearing from our panelists at this point in time is that is unlikely, and as CNBC TV 18 has been reporting, government sources telling us that there is no such proposal under consideration as of now, but several options to create a level playing field, in the words of Mr. Mohindroo and Mr. Rai, are on the table for consideration. Pankaj, Mohindroo, Madhav Sheth and Hariom Rai, always a pleasure. Appreciate you joining us here on CNBC TV 18 on Business 360. Thanks very much for your time. We'll take a break. There's a lot more coming up. Don't go anywhere. We're back in a minute with more.